we're going to move on, though, to a head coach who's on the other side who might be, we talked about him, should he get fired, but apparently his reps are looking for a way out of Notre Dame. Then he says, no, I expect to be the head coach next season. Brian Kelly. We talked about him before. Should he get fired? Both of us said yes. Now we're looking at, is it really time for them to just part ways now? End this right now? And the one thing I want to kind of a little nugget of information is if you look at the records between Charlie Weiss and then you look at Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's had a few more seasons, but the winning percentage is almost similar, as Charlie Weiss was 35-27 in his tenure, as Brian Kelly is 59-31. So he's won a few more games, gone to a few more bowl games, but this last year has been absolutely pitiful for Notre Dame. Is it time for Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish just to say, you know what, we got to part ways. This is not going to work. You go your way, I'll go my way.
Well, at 4-8, it's the first losing season in almost a decade for the Fighting Irish. And Brian Kelly, I think, is a big part of that. I think that at times this season, as a Notre Dame fan, you want to watch the games, you want to be excited, you think you're going to get some pretty good play. At times this season, and it wasn't just one time, they were just flat. They were flat, looked like they didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. They had so many issues, they couldn't figure out which one to tackle first. It was just so bad. It was so bad. They fired their defensive coordinator, Brian Van Gorder. And I think it's time to let go of the head coach. I think that right now, Brian Kelly is, I don't know if he's happy. I don't really know if he's happy. I think he's just kind of going through the motions, to be honest with you. I think that I don't think he's happy there. I don't think he's happy there at all. I think that it's gotten so bad this season, and I just don't know. I just don't know what's in store, what's coming up on the horizon for Notre Dame, but I don't know if it's going to be anything that Brian Kelly's going to be there with them for. And you got mixed signals with him. You have absolutely I'll return next year, but then he's got his representatives looking for different positions. Mm-hmm. So it's very confusing. It's a guy that is talking out of both sides of his mouth, and that's not a type of guy that you want to have as your head coach. I think Brian Kelly's got to go.
Well, and the big thing that we talked about the last time was when he should be fired. In the comment section, there were a lot of people that were like, oh, you don't fire someone for one bad season. Look at the seasons that he's had, 10-3, 8-5, 9-4, 12-1. Oh, wait, I can't go any further because those are vacated wins at this point. But the thing is, yes, this is one bad season, but sometimes all it takes is one bad season to turn into two bad seasons, to turn into three bad seasons, then four bad seasons. And what Notre Dame needs to figure out is, okay, we've got some coaching candidates that are out there right now that our team could use. Cough, cough, Les Miles. We've seen Ed Orgeron. He stays in LSU. He's not going anywhere. We see
Ed Orgeron.
Ed Orgeron. We see Tom Herman. He's no longer on the market. He's with Texas. Does Notre Dame sit there and go, Les Miles could be next? Do we really want to take the chance of losing out on a big-time name like Les Miles? And Les Miles is a guy, he's, to me, going to pull the Tom Coughlin attitude of, I'm only coming if the job is right. He doesn't have to jump at the bit to the next job. Tom Coughlin, he's sitting out this year. He didn't like Cleveland. Too cold in the winters. So he decided to stay home.
Pretty bad.
And pretty bad. 0-12.
I mean, Hugh Jackson, I don't think Hugh Jackson's that bad of a coach.
Almost brought the Wolverines to tears, or the Wolverine to tears, when he was talking about 0-12 being the hardest thing ever. I feel for the guy. He's not a bad coach.
He's
a good coach.
He's been handed a really tough card.
But back with Notre Dame, I totally think that this is time for Notre Dame and Brian Kelly to part ways. They need to just go their separate ways. Notre Dame needs a new head coach. Brian Kelly needs a change of scenery, because this is something where, whether it's the Everett Golson leaving, you have two quarterbacks in Malik Zaire and Deshaun Kaiser, who, Kaiser had a good season last year. He's not a bad quarterback, had a good season this year, but you can't figure out what to do with both of those quarterbacks, and you can't field a team that could win games this season after losing the way you did to Texas week 1. I think this is something, I know it's one season, but I think it's like, you know what? We got to part ways. We need a palate cleanser is basically what we need.
Well, Ricky, I'll tell you my biggest thing, and then I want to say something else too, but my biggest reason why I think that it's time to be done with Brian Kelly is for the fact that, yes, he's had a lot of winning seasons. He has. He's done well while he's been there. You can't take that away from him, or, well, maybe you can. In 2012 and 2013. But I think that, look at the way that he's handled himself and handled things this season. He's blamed players. He's thrown tantrums. He got rid of his defensive coordinator. Didn't help. Who's the problem? Who's the problem? Who's the issue? It's you. And you haven't taken it in stride at all. You haven't. I don't think that he's had a good attitude towards anything. Charlie Strong, I think his attitude was good the entire time, and it didn't have to be, because they screwed him. Let's be honest. Texas got a huge win with Tom Herman, but they screwed Charlie Strong, and they didn't look back, and they didn't say sorry. They paid him, paid his assistants, boom, see ya. I think that Brian Kelly cares about Brian Kelly. I don't think that there's too many guys coming out saying publicly, at least none that I've heard, plenty for Texas, that we stand behind Brian Kelly. It's been tough for him. We want him to stay. He's great to us. He's a real player's head coach. No, I don't see any of that. Do you see any of that? You don't, because it's not there. And players want a coach that's going to be there for them. And I think Brian Kelly is not there for them. He's there for Brian Kelly, and it's time for him to go. And the other thing that I have to say is, look at some of these games this season. Texas, you open it up. That's a tough game. That ends up being a really tough game. Texas played very well in week 1, and Notre Dame's defense was exposed right away week 1. Michigan State, you think you're losing to a real good team. You're not. You lose by 10 at home. The one that kills me the most, and I think it's probably because I was at the game, was Duke. 38-35 in a game that you should not have lost with your eyes closed. That was bad. And then Syracuse, you give up 33 points. NC State, you actually play the game. You should have never played that game. The weather conditions were awful. 10 fumbles in the game. And then you blame your center because he mishandles the snap on one of the nastiest games
Why do you think
ever.
he's mishandling the snap? Because the playing conditions were like they were.
Terrible. You lose to Stanford. You lose to Navy. You lose to VT. And you lose to USC. There's just, and in a couple of these games, you let the team back in. You're up by 17 some points. And you let them back in. It's just, there's so many bad things here with Notre Dame. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to. Brian Kelly just needs to go.
I'm going to give you, this is something where it happened this past week. And to me, I'm putting ownership number one on the player, but I'm also putting a little bit of ownership on Brian Kelly. And to me, this is not like a reason why he should go and they should part ways, but I think it's something where it's kind of like a seed where it can grow from this. And if you don't nip it in the bud, more things like this can happen. If you guys missed it, go look up the name Jerry Tillery and look what he did during the USC game. Kicked a USC player in the head when he was down with what could have been an apparent head injury. Stomped on another player's leg. And yes, Brian Kelly chewed him out. Then had to ask the ref what really happened. Then went and chewed him out more. to me, this is something that good coaches, this doesn't happen to them. How many times has something like this with a player happened to Urban Meyer? Happened to Nick Saban? Happened to Jim Harbaugh this season?
Can I just jump in really quickly?
Yeah.
It's not football. It's basketball. Mike Krzyzewski is a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
But take a look at
Grayson Allen.
Grayson Allen. And Grayson Allen with his little, I didn't trip him, tripping.
Step on a leg.
Last season. I mean, look at that. So I just wanted to throw that in there, but continue.
Well, and that's another thing of Grayson Allen, dirty player, and he's a dirty player. This one is, and that's why I'm saying it's not your player did that.
It's
you're
not
at fault,
it
get rid of him.
continuously happens.
It's one of those things where I start to look at, okay, this is a snowballing effect from everything else that we've been talking about. When we talked about the player suspensions at the beginning of the year, Brian Kelly, first one to throw the players, completely just out there. Like you said, with the center, throwing him out there for something that wasn't even his fault. Like, you can't hang on to the ball when you're playing in the mud bowl. You can't do that, and you're going to blame him. I get the people who say it's one bad season, let him have another one, but I do know Notre Dame fans, and Sean Anderson's one of them, where he doesn't even want to talk Notre Dame football because he'll just get depressed.
It's not fun. Let me tell you, Ricky, I am a fan of Alabama.
Where Dave just kept poking him on Saturday.
Of Notre Dame. Alabama, thank God that they have, it's not a miracle or anything, but thank goodness that they've had a great season, because Notre Dame has been awful. Mm-hmm. They're not fun to watch because, if they're up by 15, they're going to lose anyways by 1. It's terrible. It's no fun. It's no fun. I've literally just every time after they play, I haven't watched them. Since the Duke game, I said I won't watch them. I didn't. Well, I did. I guess I did against Syracuse, but that was it. Then I was done. I
guess I did against Syracuse.
And they won the Syracuse game, and I said I'm done. And I've just looked every time after they've played to see if they won or they lost. And when I see that I've checked them a little bit. Let me not lie, okay? I actually have kind of checked up on them on the ESPN app and stuff like that. But when I see that they're up, and I'm thinking, okay, we'll be fine. Then I come back and they lose. And then I read the story and it says, Notre Dame loses on last-second field goal. Notre Dame loses with 17-point lead with 10 minutes left. Notre Dame. It's like, holy crap, how many times can Notre Dame lose with so little time left on the clock, and yet the other team manages to score 17 points? Really, it's bad. It's bad. I'm right there with Sean Anderson. I think that it's depressing. It's not Notre Dame football. This is not what people are used to. But let me tell you, what you said is one bad season could snowball into another bad season, into another. I know exactly where those Texas fans are at. Charlie Strong's first. Not good. It wasn't a good season. We'll be fine next year. Same thing. Next year. Same thing. And it's like, now you got to start all over. And if you can save it before it gets there, you want to do that.
And the one thing I waited for, I didn't say, I mentioned it at the beginning of the segment, and I just let it sit there. I want to see how many people commented on it. It was kind of like a riddle. How many people solved the riddle? What did I say at the beginning? Who does Brian Kelly now have equal wins to almost?
Charlie Weiss. Because they vacated those wins in 12 and 13, Brian Kelly has 3 more wins in his tenure than Charlie Weiss did in his tenure at Notre Dame. To me, I look at that and I go, okay, take out 2 seasons and you're just a little bit better than Charlie Weiss, a guy who, he had a good season. He went 10-3 and he went 9-3. He had 2 good seasons. Then he went 3-9. Yeah, 7-6, 6-6. So if that 3-9 turned into 7-6 and 6-6, and you still got rid of him, what's the difference between a 4-8
keeping him, going 7-6, 6-6, and then getting rid of him. Just get rid of Brian Kelly right now and avoid the mediocre that could be coming for the next 2 seasons.
I know.
That's why they need to part ways.
I know. I agree. I think it's time. I think it's time. I think it's the end. It's the end for Brian Kelly. And I think that it's really interesting because I think that people actually enjoyed Charlie Weiss when he was there in his first couple of seasons, and I think that people started to kind of get tired of him. Mm-hmm. And very quickly tired of him towards the end because it just seemed like he was kind of exactly like what Brian Kelly's like now. Just very like, who cares? They're still paying me a ton of money. If I want to leave, I'll just go leave.
That's kind of what you're getting now.
What a guy. So I don't think that there's much difference between the two coaches that you got. You hired 2 grumpy old men. That's what you did. I mean, they were successful in a couple of their seasons, but then they get towards the end, and they can feel it. Trust me, you can feel it when you're starting to get towards the end, especially in that last season. And they just didn't care. And they showed that they didn't care. That's embarrassing. You showed you didn't care. At least hide it. It's bad.
Got anything else you want to say about
That's about it.
Okay. Before Brandon blows a gasket, we're going to end that segment right here. You guys let us know down below what you guys think. Is it time for ND and Brian Kelly to part ways? Should they go their separate ways? Should he be fired? Should he leave? Let us know in the comment section.